press and give, appropriate forward guidance on both the the domestic economic development, as well as their own near-term policy objectives, right? So when you don't have these meetings of the MPC, what that does is that it doesn't lead to appropriate communication of the central bank's action to market participants, and that could create a shock. But luckily for Nigeria, the interesting thing is that since we haven't had the MPC meeting, we have seen the central bank governor come out frequently, to state his opinion of how the economy is performing and also his near-term, monetary policy outlook.
That sounds very nice, soundbite for the television. But that's when the Godwin Emefiele speaks. He's speaking for himself and his staffers within the central bank because he's the CEO of the central bank. Correct. But we don't have an independent view here of what Emefiele is doing with his colleagues behind closed doors. So the MPC is what makes that possible for us.
Indeed.
So we don't have that yet.
We don't have that yet.
So that means that this particular meeting and those comments in the communique or the minutes of the meeting, which should also guide not just investors but even the fiscal authorities, is absent.
It is absent, and it is a gaping hole because the interesting thing is that for most frontier markets, investors have come to recognize that political risk and political gridlock is a major risk that you cannot avoid. But when you start having political gridlocks and political risk affecting policy making, particularly monetary policy, you are pushing your luck, you are pushing it so far, and which is why for us we are very happy that the legislators have now...
The National Assembly. You think they've pushed our luck too far?
Too far, because you don't want political gridlock to interfere with independent monetary policy making. The major reason why that's even the major reason why we even have the MPC in the first instance, to separate monetary policy making from the hands of political authorities. But now, when political authorities, due to their own differences, are now, taking some actions that is affecting the ability of the policy committee to meet, then it's a major risk to the economy. But I think it's been averted now.
We're looking at this situation, and of course, there are some costs, even though we can't put it in Naira and Kobo. But of course, we're paying some costs for this delay in terms of investors' perception. Now, we're talking about investors' perception from the outside world, whether they're doing portfolio or they're doing direct investment.
Perception-wise, it is bad, but on investor confidence, I would say this current event is happening at a very good economic period. It's happening in a period when we are experiencing, a growth upturn. It's happening in a period where we are having stability in external sector variables. Oil prices are stable, production volumes are up in Nigeria. We've been recording successive trade surpluses, current account is in surplus, external reserves are rising, and inflation rate is also coming down. So for most investors, amidst this plethora of very positive news, the only negative news from monetary policy, which is the fact that we're unable to hold MPC meeting, is sort of being, underestimated, in terms of their perception and their confidence in the economy. So even though we don't have an MPC meeting, the confidence of investors in the Nigerian economy and the financial markets still remains very, very robust because of the other positive news we are getting both on the domestic, price development, the growth figures, and stable.
I got that. You said earlier in your comment that we shouldn't push, the Senate shouldn't push our luck too far.
We shouldn't push it too far.
Because, and I'm sure if we hadn't have a few things in our kitty, if we do our SWOT analysis, by now we should be sweating seriously when it comes to the fact that we don't have an MPC. But it looks like the groundswell had been there. So let's take us to the market. The equities market seems to just ignore the MPC. We had a rally from 2017 into early 2018, but looks like we are looking at the bottom of the barrel, are we?
Not essentially, not really, because for the equity market, the major driver in the past 2 years has been majorly macroeconomic fundamentals. When we had the downturn in oil prices, which affected, the FX rate and FX market liquidity, it had a negative impact on the equity market. But now, with the rebound in external sector variables and the improvement in FX market liquidity and much more policy flexibility on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria since the introduction of the high-and-yield window in April 2017, we have seen confidence rebound in the economy, and valuation multiples on PE and price-to-book terms, they have expanded quite well because of the improving confidence in the economy. But also on the other hand, we've also seen very robust earnings in 2017 and even into Q1 2018, which expects. And that robust earnings is being driven by two factors. Number one, for the consumer goods companies, many of them, consumer goods and even industrial goods companies, many of them raised the prices of their products in 2017, because of the high cost pressures that they have experienced in the past quarters. And so that increase in their product prices offsets the increase in cost pressures, and the margins are a lot better now. And for banks,
February wasn't really good.
February?
Yes.
For the equity markets?
Yes.
It's not been good.
Yes. And March, we're a negative 3.22% since March the 1st. And year to date, we're now in single digits. That doesn't look good to me.
It doesn't look good because we are seeing a sharp correction in the prices of banking stocks and also consumer goods.
How long do you think this correction will last?
I think it will probably last in the next one quarter at least.
One quarter?
Yeah, and the reason is
we're almost ending this quarter.
The reason is this.
I'm looking at the Easter holiday, even though I'm going to still be here. But again, we're almost done with March.
No, I'm talking about the general sentiments in the markets. Okay. Definitely, there will be some up days and some down days. The market should rebound very soon because of cheap prices, and people are going to be, taking advantage of bargain opportunities. Okay. But in terms of the short to medium-term view for the markets, the short-term view is a bit bearish, because for most investors, they've become accustomed to very high dividend yield, which unfortunately they're not going to be having in 2018 because of the improvements in multiples.
Let's go there. You just finish that off for us after the break, then we'll go into the fixed income. The key reason when we're looking at the impact of the MPC and the fixed income space. Let's come back to Motola Bimbola after the break. You're watching Business Morning.